So, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marc Dumoulin. I'm the Secretary General of ECSA, the European Composer and Songwriter Alliance. I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to this new edition of Capacity Triangle, which is organized by ECSA with the support of the Creative Europe program, which is the European Commission framework program for the cultural and creative sectors. As most of you know, ECSA is a professional alliance formed by over 60 associations of composers and songwriters from all over Europe. The main objective of ECSA is to defend and promote the rights of music authors at the national, European, and international level. Thanks a lot for tuning in today. We have many attendees with a very good mix of composers, collective management organizations, and policymakers from the European Commission. And we even have some of our friends from Canada. During our webinar today, we will talk about authors' contracts and look at the various examples and practices of collective bargaining agreements from France and Germany. So we will first hear from both countries, and then we'll have a space for questions at the end. So please don't hesitate to insert your question in the Q&A box. So as you know, just to give the background of all this, as you know, the 2019 Copyright Directive has recognized that authors are in a weak bargaining position when they sign contracts. So the Copyright Directive includes several provisions to improve their contractual position. Those provisions set out in Article 18 to 23 of the directive include a principle of appropriate and proportionate remuneration, transparency obligation, a contract adjustment mechanism, an alternative dispute resolution mechanism, and a right of revocation. As the deadline for national implementation is 7th of June of this year, we continue to advocate for an ambitious and swift implementation in all EU member states. Those articles often mention collective bargaining agreements as one of the possible instruments to implement those provisions and enforce those rights. So, but very often we have seen that EU competition law has prevented those agreements to be negotiated and to come into force. This is an important issue for many authors in different sectors. And together with other author associations, such as FERA, the Federation of European Screen Directors, or FSC, the Federation of Screenwriters in Europe, we have worked to alert the European Commission about this contradiction between the Copyright Directive on one hand and EU competition law on the other hand. Now the European Commission is tackling this issue with various consultations, and we very much hope that it will soon remove those obstacles and make sure that EU competition law does not prevent collective bargaining agreements for authors and performers. But let me now come back to our main topic today. We will look at the various mechanisms and collective bargaining agreements that can improve the situation of authors and their contracts in France and Germany. From Germany, we will try to get a broad overview of the legal framework and existing collective bargaining agreements, and at the mediation process within GEMA, which gathers music authors and music publishers. Looking at France, we will focus on the code of good practices for the publishing of musical works, known in French as le Code des Usages, which was signed in 2017 by the main organization representing both music authors and music publishers in France. To do so, I'm very glad to welcome our speakers for today's webinar. On the German side, I would like first to welcome Katharina Uppenbrink, who has been the managing director of Initiative Urheberrecht since May 2014. I'm sorry for my accent already, Katharina. Initiative Urheberrecht, the author's right initiative in Germany, represents the interest of approximately 140,000 authors and performing artists in the field of composition, orchestra, journalism, film and television, dance, visual arts, drama, and many more. Let me also welcome Micki Meuser, who is a film composer and producer. Micki wrote music for numerous movies, including international feature films in the US and Canada, and also many TV movies and TV series in Germany. Micki Meuser is currently president of the German Film Composers Union, DEFKOM, and on the board of DKW, the German Composer Association. He is also on the supervisory board of GEMA. And now looking at France, I would like to welcome Juliette Metz. Juliette has an extensive experience in music publishing and has been the chairwoman of la Chambre syndicale de l'édition musicale, the main organization representing music publishers in France since 2016. And last but not least, let me also welcome Wally Badarou, who has written, performed, and co-produced many musical pieces, notably with the British band Level 42. Wally joined SACEM boards of director in 2012 and is now on the board of ECSA. So I would like now to start with Germany with some question for Katharina. Katharina, you're representing Initiative Urheberrecht, which gathers all authors and artists from different creative sectors. It is often said that Articles 18 to 23 in the Copyright Directive, which regulates for the first time authors and performers' contracts with their contractual counterparts, have been inspired by German law. Can you explain what is the legal framework and how has been the experience with it so far in Germany? Then I would like to add a few more questions to you. Do you know examples of collective bargaining agreements for authors in Germany in all kinds of different creative sectors? What have been the obstacles to collective bargaining agreements in Germany? What are the challenges? And do you think it can be an efficient method to improve authors' contracts? Katharina, the floor is yours. I think you're on mute, Katharina.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm sorry. Thank you for the invitation by ECSA and yes, these questions, and I hope I will at least answer some of them. And yes, certain and important parts of the directive have been inspired by the German copyright law, especially the German copyright contract law. And yeah, it's Article 18, the appropriate and proportionate remuneration, Article 19, transparency clause, the bestseller clause, etc. Some of the new regulations of the directive and certainly the articles concerning copyright contract law will improve the legal situation of authors and performing artists in in all over Europe, and hopefully in Germany as well. But I will be talking about the process in Germany later on. Let me give you a brief, let's call it history lesson, because the German Copyright Act, which came into existence in 1965, was amended several times. At its core, the German copyright contract law is ensuring that authors and performers receive appropriate remuneration, as it says in the German copyright law, for the exploitation of their works from their contractual partners. Since 2002, and following a very heated disputes between copyright holders and the exploiters, the German Copyright Act has included a number of new provisions designed to achieve this goal. At the center of this is the claim to appropriate remuneration. I'm sorry, after years, still sometimes not that easy. So talking about appropriate remuneration, this claim exists in relationship between authors and contractual partners. If remuneration has been agreed upon, but it's not appropriate, authors have a contractual claim for corrections against their contractual partners. And at that time, the German legislator also saw and proposed that the appropriate remuneration could be negotiated through collective bargaining agreements, GVR in short in German. And I was asked to focus on this aspect. But before I do that, let me point out, in the German law, agreements of the guilds are called joint remuneration agreements, and the ones by unions are called collective bargaining agreements. I know I will not focus on this, but it was important for me and for the discussion, I think, to point out that these are two different types of agreements. And further on, I'll be talking about the joint remuneration agreements. So I'll focus on the guilds agreements and not on the union agreements. I hope that's okay, Mark, and that's what you wanted. The negotiations are conducted between representative authors and users associations. For example, the Association of Producers or individual producers. We do have a collective agreement between a guild and just one production company in the film and TV sector, for example. And in Germany, collecting societies are not negotiation partners. If an agreement exists, the remuneration provided for is irrefutably appropriate. So when determining the appropriate remuneration in GVRs, the parties involved negotiate directly with each other. The law regulates in detail compensation rules and provides for a procedure before an arbitration board. After many years of very few GVR agreements, some remuneration rules have been since then agreed for authors and translators of works of fiction, for example, in the press sector and in the area of film and television. Some other aspects. The courts have dealt with the fairness compensation more frequently in recent years. Particularly well known is the case of the chief cameraman of the film Das Boot, Just Vacano, who has been suing the film's production company, among others, for many years. And a very recent is a lawsuit by the screenwriter of the films Kein Ohrhasen, Zwei Ohrküken, Annika Decker, who is also invoking the fairness paragraph. These films were incredibly successful and still are, by the way. So let's see what's going to happen. In addition to the claim to appropriate remuneration and fairness compensation, the German law also recognizes a claim to information and accountability on the parts of authors vis-à-vis their contractual partners, mainly. The only way to deviate from the provisions of the law to the disadvantage of the authors is on the basis of a collective agreement by a union or a collective bargaining agreement by a guild representing authors or performers. This clearly shows how much the legislator relies on collective agreements, on joint remuneration agreements. The regulations on copyright contract law, which were first introduced in 2002, were reformed in some respects in 2016. Now, in connection with the implementation of the EU directive in the DSM directive, a renewed revision of the existing law is pending. Fundamental changes to the system, we're talking about the copyright contract law, not the rest, will not be required, but a few adjustments are necessary and under discussion, especially concerning the transparency obligation, Article 19, because it clearly says that authors and performers should receive the information of the users of their works on a regular basis, at least once a year, and at their request receive from sub-licensees additional information. I summarized this, but the discussions about the implementation into German law are widely debated right now, and we'll see if there are going to be changes of the draft or not. Hopefully not. By the way, many thanks to Robert Startz. He's CEO of the Collecting Society of Regiwort, and he wrote a very interesting article on the situation right now. And I used a certain amount of this article. Yes. You also asked me if I know of examples of collective bargaining agreements, again, of joint remuneration agreements in Germany. And as I said, there are more and more now. It started slowly, now there are more. And a list does not exist, but we assume that there are about 25 agreements, or maybe more. They are between a few publishers and the translators, quite a lot by the guilds of screenwriters, directors, and the Actors Guild and broadcasters, private and public ones, and the Association of the Producers. Sometimes union and guilds or several guilds agree to negotiate together, sometimes not, and the reasons are diverse. Concerning the audiovisual sector, in most cases, there are several agreements, for example, film and TV feature films and series. The new Netflix agreements and or negotiations are interesting. Some are completed, some not. And as far as I know, this is happening all over Europe. And yes, I'm not going to focus on that, but I think it's something that happened because of the directive and the pending implementation in all the European countries. As far as I know, there are no DVRs agreements in the music or composition sector, but Micki will tell us more about this. You mentioned the consultation concerning the competition law, and yeah, let me make clear, I agree, it's an important step for a European way to negotiate fair compensation. Personally, I was involved in two of the first discussions on agreements, debates, but that was a long time ago. And for more detailed information, I would like to give anyone who's interested the contact details of my colleagues who deal with joint remuneration agreements on a daily basis, and they'll be happy to answer detailed questions. All of them work on the international level as well, so language shouldn't be a problem. Mark, what did I forget? Were there more questions?
Thank you very much, Katharina. I think it was very helpful, and in particular to underline the importance of the transparency obligations, because of course, you know, without getting transparency, it's very hard for an author to understand how, if the remuneration is fair, appropriate, and proportionate. So many thanks for that. Now I will turn to Micki. Micki, you're not only a bass player, studio musician, and a music producer. You are also, of course, a film composer. Can you explain what are the different areas of remuneration for a film composer and where collective bargaining agreements could help improve situation? And then I know that you've been participating to a mediation process within GEMA. Can you tell us a little bit more about this process and what is the role of GEMA in this mediation process?
Okay, yes, thank you, Mark, and thank you for the invitation. Yes, of course, the interesting thing about being a film composer, and that's the part that I want to emphasize now on, is that we are both being music and film. So we are in two industries, and that makes it very interesting also for politicians to talk to us. And as the remuneration side and the transparency is involved, we have a situation that the remuneration of being an author, of writing music, is no problem at all. I mean, this is all done by the CMOs, by GEMA in Germany, and there's no work for the producers, or just tiny work for the producers. There's only, and there's not too much work for record companies and labels. If it comes to the contract side that Katharina mentioned, and the things that are concerned with Article 18 to 24, it gets more interesting and more diverse. We, of course, have the music industry, and it's I'm not always saying positive things about the music industry, but at least the music industry has been, and I've been in it for 40 years now, has been giving us statements every half a year, as much as the publisher, and Juliette maybe can talk about that as well. So we get a statement every half a year. There was no need to regulate that by contract law or by the European directive. The situation is completely different in the film industry. In the film industry, being a film composer, I get a fee once, and then I never hear about it again. And that is a thing that has been changed already by the before mentioned contract law in Germany in 2016, 2017. We have a transparency and information clause there. In theory, we can ask the film producers for information once a year. And that has been confirmed now by the European directive. We think this is a very good thing to help us trace the ways the music in our film goes. Because, you know, for me, it's very important if it's a bestseller, if it's selling well, if it's going to a different country, if it's going to Italy or some other country, then I can inform the CMOs to trace it there. For us, it's crucial because it's a lot of money that lies there, and if we don't trace it, it gets lost. So this was installed in Germany already 2017, but the thing is that since then, we tried to negotiate it. We talked to the film producers and TV stations, and they have been negotiating to gain time, to win time, because they thought the European directive would probably cancel that. And now we are really happy that the European directive is making that even stronger. It's putting it up onto the European level. And so I can only report that these negotiations about transparency and the information of where the film is being used and the music is being used will come up in the next years. We tried to follow it and negotiate it already, but we didn't succeed because the producers just played on time. So this is still a very crucial thing for us, and we will follow it up, and we will, we're looking forward to start the negotiations. And as Katharina said, the directors in Germany and the screenwriters have already successfully installed their bargaining and their deals, as I may say, but the film composers haven't, because we had so much obstacles and so much resistance. But we will insist on that. So that's it for from this side. I don't know if you have any more questions. Maybe we have time for questions later on. If it comes to the other thing that I should talk about, the mediation board, the GEMA arbitration board. This is because when we planned this meeting, we thought we'd give a couple of best practice from Europe, at least from Germany. And this is one of the examples that I think are very good. And I'm going to share, if it works, I'm going to try to share my screen here now. And where am I? Oh, it's not there, just a second. This is obviously the wrong screen. Sorry. Okay, I'll try again. If I don't succeed, then maybe Alessandra from ECSA can help me. I'll try again. It's there. Now I got it. It was just disappeared. So this is what I'm going to talk about, is the GEMA. You know, GEMA is the CMO. The GEMA arbitration board. You know, there are some publishers and some authors that are not happy with their publishing company, that are not happy with the work the publishing company does. And sometimes, as a film composer, you have the situation that the film producer forces you into their own publishing company, which we call coercive publishing. And that's also not very fair if they, especially if they don't do any publishing work afterwards. So they only take the publishing to make some money and put that money into their film producing. And this is not what the author's money and the publishing money is meant to be. So watching all these quarrels between authors and publishers, we thought it would be a good idea to install an arbitration board within our CMO that would make it easier to settle problems. And not everybody has the money to go to court. And we thought this is something that can settle things before court. It basically says it here on the screen. The other advantages are quicker decisions. We are much quicker than a court, and it's less expensive, as I said. This arbitration board can be called from both sides, by the way. I mean, there might be publishers that are not content with their authors, maybe because they do double publishing contracts and stuff like that. I heard of things like that. It was first agreed by the GEMA General Assembly. It needed to be agreed by all the members in the assembly, and it got a 2/3 majority in 2018, and it got installed in 2019. And we thought it would be reasonable at the same time to just write down what are publishers doing, what are the achievements, what are the activities, and what are the tasks of a publishing company. We identified a couple of things like paying advances, making promotion, doing income tracking, which is especially important for film composers like me, because there's no way I can find out if a movie of mine is being shown in South America, because it will have a completely different title there, something in Spanish that is probably not the translation of the English title. So I need somebody who does that professionally, and that could be a publishing company. Printing music and administration of the work. This is some of the examples, but it's not all. So the board is consisting of a senior music author, a senior publisher, and a person that is outside the CMO, but it's a person qualified to hold the position of a judge. And to finish this off, we had 15 cases so far, so the publishers were worried that it would be thousands of authors now taking the publishers into this arbitration board. That's not true. We only had 15 cases. All decisions were unanimous, so it was pretty clear what came out, and 10 cases were ruled in favor of the authors. And this is not the end. I mean, if the Game Arbitration Board does a decision and gives a verdict, you can still go to court afterwards, but you have to face that the verdict of the Game Arbitration Board is considered to be a verdict of experts. So it's already plays an essential role, but it's not the last word. So you can still go to court. This is what I wanted to present you, and I'm open to more questions later on. Thank you. Now I have to stop this, yeah? Okay, great.
Thank you very much, Micki. It's very helpful, and thank you for being very German and being on time. So now I'm going to cross the Rhine and ask a few questions to Juliette. So Juliette, thanks a lot for bringing the publisher's perspective to this dialogue. You have been very involved in the discussions that led to the signature of the Code des Usages in French, which is a code of good practices for the publishing of musical works. Can you give us an overview of what the Code des Usages is and why it was drafted? For how much time it has been in place for now? What are the most important points for music publishers? And what do you think, how it impacted the relationship between publishers and authors until now? Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I guess that normally Wally, as the writer, would speak first for France, but as I'm a woman, I speak first. I guess it's the rule today. So the Code of Good Practice in France has been signed in 2017. We had 2 years of discussions. It takes a lot of time to find compromise, to find what's fair for each party, and we were not really we were in contact before, but we didn't have the same relationship. So it was very, very useful for me to be in the same room, to not to have the choice. You had to be in the same room and you had to talk, you had to discuss all the issues that were raised from the writers or from the publishers. And I think that it was coming from a demand from writers, because they not in the music sector, but in the book sector, they already had signed an agreement like that. And so I guess it was natural to do the same in the music field. So it was coming from the creators, and I have to say, because I'm honest, that at first we were not very happy with it, because that felt like a threat. So it was difficult at the beginning, but more and more during the 2 years, I think a trust was built, you know, at one point when you discuss with people and when you really explain what's the issue, what's the problem, why it's not possible to agree on something you're asking, because on the level of a writer only, that would be possible. But when you have to manage a full team of, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of writers, sometimes there are demands that were not possible on a big scale. So my view is that it's always very useful to be at the same table and to get to know each other better, to understand the issue that one has to face. And for me, it's very useful because I guess that we really needed, when I see that now, we really needed more definitions, you know. When you're talking about what GEMA has done, it's a surprise for me to see that the General Assembly is saying what's the role of a publisher, because I don't think that would happen with SACEM, but because we have a different way of doing things. But the Code of Good Practice defines what's the role of the publisher and explain exactly what's the one of the main thing was to define what's the permanent and sustainable exploitation of the work, because that's what's in the French law, and we had no definition. We had a definition at the MPA, the Music Publisher Association, but it was not something that we had discussed with the writers. And I think that was very useful to be at the table together and say, so what's the role of a publisher? What do you think is really important? What does he have to do? And so for me, that was very useful to get to know each other and to understand our problems. And I think we were all very proud at the end to sign this. It was at the Minister of Culture, and I remember it as a very happy moment. I would not have imagined that at the beginning of the talks, but at the end, it was happy. And I really see a difference after this signature between the writers and the publishers. The relationships are very different. It was very useful for us to be united, to work together, to push for the directive. We went together in Brussels or Strasbourg. We were all together in the same boat, and I'm not sure it would have been the same if it hadn't been with this code of good practice. And on a daily basis, now we can have meetings or calls on now Zoom to talk about issues that we have together, trying to find what's best for us. And for me, it's it's very positive. I'm sorry if I've been too long.
No, it's perfect, Juliette. Thanks a lot. Now I'm going to turn to Wally. So Wally, as a music author, what is your view on the Code des Usages? What do you think it brings to authors? What were the most important points for authors during the negotiations? And what are the next steps? Because I remember that we talked about maybe putting this agreement into French law. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thank you, Mark. This code has been sort of a dream that we've been having for a long time. And as Juliette just put it, it was not an easy process just to sit down and agree to talk to each other. And that took some time. And finally, we managed to do it. And the goal, as Juliette stressed out, was to do what the authors in literature managed to do, which was that they had a code of good practice that allowed them to figure out exactly where they were in regards to their publishers and what they could expect from them, and also how to have sort of a mechanism in the resolution of disputes, as well as revocation if that was needed, or they felt the need of. And so obviously it was a good thing for us. I mean, there's no way we could have not wished it. And also all the articles were somehow even beyond what we thought we could get. And as Juliette put out, it really was a matter of really understanding that we were all in the same boat, basically, especially in regard of not just exploit, those who were to be using our works, but the tech giants in this world. What we also sort of looked for was to help publishers that we believed, and we still believe are our partners in this field, to not just clean their act, but make sure that those of them who really deserve to be called publishers actually attract the authors towards them. And for that to happen, we needed to set rules. We needed to define what the publisher was, and we needed to set the rules by which we knew we could talk and we could value this or that publisher versus the rest of them. It was a way, in sorts, to tackle the issue of coercing publishing, whereby if we cannot eliminate it, if we cannot eradicate coercive publishing, we are kind of far from it. At least what we could do is force those who pretend to be our publishers to do the job, and or face revocation if they didn't do the job. So basically, that was one of the things that really pushed us, and that's really what we are about to gain. For as much as these can be put into action, which is still happening, because as you stressed out, it's not in the law yet, and it needs to be in the law if we want the third partner in the game, which is the CMO, to take action upon the situations where the authors rightly sense that he should have automatic revocation. That cannot happen unless the law is being changed into making sure that the evidence put forward by the authors are really being taken into effect. So that is still to happen, and we're still working on it. As you know, the COVID drama has been putting so many things on hold, and this is one of the issue that the government, the French government, was about to put into legislative action, but could not do it because we had too many things to deal with. But hopefully we might have it in the law one day or another. Let's pray for it.
Thank you very much, Wally. So just for your information, you can find in the chat the English translation of the Code des Usages that was kindly sent to us by Juliette. And of course, there is a French version quickly available online also.
Mark?
Yes.
May I add something? Because
Absolutely.
Juliette said, I already wrote it in the chat, but I don't know if everybody saw it. I want to avoid the impression that authors are against publishers. As Wally said, we're all in the same boat. And I'm an example that I've been working with publishers all my life. The agreement to install this GAMA arbitration board was also carried by the publishers, because the GAMA has like the three parts, lyricists, composers, and publishers. And the publishers agreed, and it looks like a similar agreement to the code d'usage that you have. So we didn't plan it, but we have something very similar.
No, I'm sure it's the same. It's just for me, it's strange to see that inside GAMA. I'm sure the publishers agreed with it, but it's just that we've done something outside CSDEM, and it's among us. And just for me, it's a surprise to see that inside GAMA, the General Assembly says what is a publisher and what is wrong. So that it's just a surprise, but no problem with that.
Yeah, it's true that we managed to have that kind of a solution, but outside of CSDEM. I mean, and publishers and authors in France agreed to build a resolution committee, a dispute resolution committee, which is totally independent from CSDEM. But it's kind of working the same way with the same kind of board and process.
And it's a good example of what sort of agreements we can do if we want to work together. As I said in the beginning, I mean, the music sector, the music industry is not all angels, especially when it comes to streaming and stuff like that. But we seem to have better agreement facilities and the will to find solutions than what I can report from the film industry, for instance. As I said, they blocked everything after 2017. They blocked all, like from the film composer at least, all our attempts to get a collective bargaining agreement. They said, you get a fee right now, but this is all wrong. Especially you should not get anything because you get GEMA, you get your author's license, and that should pay for the film music. And this is just, they were just sending us around the block to the legal block to look at it again. So they were just trying to gain time. And now we will finally try to talk with them. This is why it's so important that the European directive is being implemented the way it was meant to be. And that's a problem sometimes in Germany. Maybe we can talk about that as well.
Absolutely, Micki. If you want to develop a little bit on the implementation of the copyright directive in Germany, we have a bit more time. So please go ahead if you want.
May I stress something, Mark, in between? I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I have an incredible emergency that I cannot postpone, so I'm going to have to leave you in a couple of minutes from now. I'm so sorry to say.
Okay, no worries, Wally. Good luck with everything.
Well, maybe I do that with Katharina, who is much more involved than I am. You probably heard that we had already in 2019, when the Parliament was going to vote on the European directive, we had heavy lobbying from Google that ended in people demonstrating in the streets. They sent all the young people with using fake news, they sent them to the streets. And so we have similar difficulties right now, not heavy demonstrations, but we have things that exceptions from the rules. 15 seconds of music should be free, 15 seconds of film should be free. and other things. And maybe I give to Katharina, she is much more in the frame, and she can tell us about the problems that we have and the negotiations that we're doing right now. I'm not really informed because it changes day to day.
Thank you, Wally. Please, Katharina, if you want to say something.
Yes, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Micki. I'm afraid, as Micki said, it's changing almost every day. Of not the draft itself, but we had several drafts for the last 14 months. The last draft was published in beginning of February. It's the cabinet draft, the government draft, and it's now going to be discussed in the parliament. It's they meaning the government and then now most of the members of parliament, we assume, aim to have this put into German law, implemented by the beginning of May. So we're going to have another few weeks discussing certain aspects, and our main goals, or some of the main goals, have been fulfilled, or the wishes have been fulfilled, and but they are still some aspects that have to be urgently improved, and some are concerning the reform of the copyright contract law. Others, and this is what Micki mentioned, concerning the new instruments and barriers of the it's so-called Copyright Service Providers Act. It's a new law. We still are trying to remember the wording and pronounce it. It's in German even difficult for Germans. It's Urdak. And we are not happy with parts of it, but on the other hand, the government made it quite clear that it should be in favor of the authors and performing artists. So yeah, it's a very difficult time of the implementation to give concrete information, and we have to wait and see. But keep your fingers crossed, please.
Will. Okay, thank you, Katharina. Maybe just if I don't see question in the Q&A section nor in the chat. So, but I have my own question to Juliette about, so looking at France now. So I heard various things about the implementation in France. Of course, you know, there is a COVID-19 situation. There was also a lot of discussion and even a draft law now on the implementation more on the of the vis-à-vis directive. So, but are you hopeful that there will be an implementation soon of the directive in France? Can you tell us a little bit more?
From what I understood, and I have to say that it's difficult to follow because it has changed, and with the COVID we are more focused on the problem with the pandemic than on this, because it's sort of it's a series. One day it's okay, it's going to be implemented, and the day after, no, they don't have time. So from what I understood, there was something that has been voted at the end of last year, which said that they have 6 months to put it in the law. So I guess that we are waiting for decrease to make it effective. So the text is stabilized, so it's okay, it won't change. We just need sort of a window for it to to be done. I'm not a specialized in that, but for me it's okay. It's gonna happen, so no big deal for the moment. That's what I understood. I'm sorry, I'm not the the one.
It's okay. So let's hope that it will happen before the deadline.
I'm sure they will do that. We are more focused now on trying to find a way to have the code of good practice put into law, because that would be great to not have only the members of our Music Publishers Association obliged to comply to the code, and we would love to have all the publishers involved, and also the one which are also broadcasters, for example, because they are not doing very often what a publisher is supposed to do. So that would be great. And I'm not paranoid, but I think that there are some push, some lobby against that, because they don't want to be to have to comply to this code. So we'll see. But we in this battle, we are together with the writers, all the writers union in France, to try to have this put into the French law, the code of good practice.
Okay, thanks a lot, Juliette. Very, very helpful. So I see now question coming in. One about is there a document or a framework for all the do's and don'ts from the author's point of view? Of course, so of course, this would need to be either we would talk about like a European framework, or something we could go more into details at the national level, I guess. But if you want to react to that, and then I'm going to transmit some other of the questions. So are there any views on the Commission work on gig workers and collective bargaining agreements? This is probably for Katharina. If you want to look at the it's I think it's someone from the European Commission who is asking what are the views on what the Commission is doing regarding the interplay between competition law and collective bargaining agreements. And then we have a question, can the GEMA Arbitration Board contribute to greater use, relevance of bestseller clause renegotiation of contracts in accordance also with Article 21st of the DSM directive? So do you want to, who wants to take the question about the do's and don'ts, or the question, do you want Katharina to maybe answer to the question about what the European Commission is doing on collective bargaining agreements and competition law?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. But as I said, we think it's an important step. It's more important for some countries than for others. I know of Ireland, Netherlands, and one more country that I don't remember right now. Spain? No, it wasn't Spain. But there are 3 or 4 countries who have a very difficult situation concerning collective agreements, bargaining agreements, and this has been so for some time already, and I'm glad, and we are glad that the Commission is working on it. But I would like to refer to you, Mark, or Pauline from FERA, or David from FSE, because you're much more into the details.
Absolutely, I could send to Ida our joint paper. Maybe she has seen it already, but we could do that. So now let's turn to the question about the GEMA Arbitration Board. Micki?
Yes, well, No. The GEMA Arbitration Board is only for the relation between one author and one publisher, and can they work together, and does either of them not fulfill their duties as an author or as a publisher. That's all. The bestseller clause is there. It's especially, I know many examples of that in Germany, and it works. I mean, if there is a bestseller and there's a certain amount, then the author gets an extra according to the bestseller clause. That is not something that GEMA would look after, because it's not necessarily author's money. It belongs to the money that is being paid for the making of the film, for the performing rights, for the master and sync rights. So it's not a matter of GEMA. So not that, but it works. The bestseller clause works. And Katharina wants to say something.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Micki. I would like to add that although we do have the right to get information, the transparency clause, in parts in Germany already, it's going to change into being something an author and performer can ask for. And now it's going to change into a duty that he gets the information on a yearly basis. And this is going to change the whole situation concerning bestseller clauses as well, because some or quite a lot of authors and performers were afraid to ask for the information because they didn't, they wanted the next contract with, in general, important producers or broadcasters they were dealing with. So one can call it blacklisting, one can call it the usual the situation of who has more power, more influence, who's on the who has it easier in dealing with information. And it certainly is in general the contract partner of an author or a performer. So saying that, it's going to be important not only concerning the platforms, but also concerning the main contract partners of authors and performers to be able to get the information without asking for it. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have more bestseller arrangements following that. Thank you.
Mark, I would like to comment on this first question about, what was it, framework of contracts. I think this is very difficult for the European Commission to do, and also for ECSA or anybody to do, because it's so diverse. As a film composer, I have so many different works where I have different money that I could ask for. And the same goes as a bass player, as a music producer and other stuff. So what sort of contract would you ask the government to fill out or to prepare for you? This is a problem. If I may, I can show you our negotiation. I can try to share the screen again and show you our negotiation from the film musician's side. That's very compact and it's very easy to see. I try if I can get it here. So this is one framework that we are doing. It's in German, I apologize, but this is what we are asking for film music. You know, like I crossed out the figures, the money, but you know, you already as a film composer, you have so many examples. The first thing is a feature film, it's an event film, a series, 30 minutes, and documentations, and then orchestra, studio musicians, and stuff like that. So you see how diverse it is already in one job that we're doing, in one profession. So it's very hard for a commission or politicians to give us an example of what we should do. And in my opinion, we should do that ourselves. So this is what we are negotiating with the film producers, that at least we have a framework that our members in the associations know for a 90 minutes feature film, this is the common money that you would take. And maybe the producer can go up or down, but he shouldn't go down too much, because then what is in the implementation right now, the appropriate remuneration would be lost, and then you could take him to court. So just an example, and this is what I wanted to add to this question.
Thank you, Micki. Let me check, because, okay, I saw some question because there is a chat, but also the Q&A, but I don't see other question now, and I think we are already beyond time. So I'd like to thank you, and to thank everyone for following this webinar. A recording of the webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. And thanks once again to all the speakers, and also for Creative Europe to allow us to organize this webinar. And hopefully we'll see you at the next ECSA event soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.